mysterious West Mountain base has finally surfaced. They found out that I possess a massive amount of materials. Consequently, I've been targeted by this powerful underground force. After dealing with Lufunga, he predictably set up a program in advance. He sent a text message to everyone in Heavenly Sea City. My smoke bomb successfully drowned out this message. Not even a ripple was stirred. Moreover, the content of Lufunga's text message merely revealed my identity and address, as well as the possibility of possessing stolen goods from the Walmart warehouse, and in huge quantities. Huge quantities doesn't mean all of it. Such ambiguous expression lacks a clear quantitative standard. After all, how could he know about spatial abilities? And I've sent hundreds of fabricated messages. It's very hard for ordinary people to discern which is true. If someone does manage to find me, they won't be just any ragtag group, or they might have top computer experts. I continue practicing with my bow and arrow. After nearly half a month of relentless training, I seem to have expanded my spatial ability, developing some unique powers. This ability can attach to weapons and projectiles, enhancing their power and accuracy. With the aid of this ability, I can hit a target 400 meters away with a single arrow. Then, I had an idea. What if I apply this ability to close combat weapons, or even to my body? The results were surprisingly good. With the ability enveloping my body, the air resistance I faced greatly reduced. My speed increased manifold. With greater speed, my dodging ability also improved, making escapes much quicker. I've grown to like the abilities I possess. Though they seem simple, they have infinite developmental potential. I can even feel that I've only scratched the surface of an iceberg. I can't imagine how powerful it would be if fully developed. Suddenly, my stomach growled. I quickly took out 2 chocolate bars and stuffed them into my mouth. It seems this ability does consume a lot. After all, power comes from cells. To maintain strength, I must replenish with food. That means, the strength of a mutant depends on the amount of food they have. No matter how powerful the opponent's abilities, without food, they can't use them. Thinking of the inexhaustible supplies in my own space, in that case, am I not invincible? At least, I can wear them down with unlimited supplies. Meanwhile, in an underground shelter, Chen, the leader of the West Mountain organization, is worried about the base's energy problems. Just then, the secretary Guro enters with a stack of documents, slowly saying, "The information we received earlier has been investigated. All messages come from Heron's River District, Lark Manor, mostly from Villa 101 in Lark Manor. However, one message is special. It came from the mobile phone of Lufunga, chairman of the Intelligent Cloud Group. His home is in Lark Manor, Villa 302. Chen takes the report and ponders for a moment. Give me a detailed report on Zhang Yi mentioned in the report. I want to know what a mere warehouse manager can stir up. Secretary Guro meticulously reports Zhang Yi's information to Chen. Upon learning that he's just a small warehouse manager, Chen expression immediately becomes uninterested. Just a petty thief. Most likely, he's been embezzling using his position. He's probably hoarded a lot of stolen goods until now. Even if this matter is somewhat related to him, the goods in his possession can't be that much. This guy definitely isn't the mastermind behind the warehouse theft case. Guro immediately started flattering. The leader is absolutely right. How could such a small fry have such capabilities? Chen smiled slightly, showing a look of seeing through everything. This must be a foreign conspiracy. They must have received intelligence in advance, and thus withdrew the materials beforehand. Later, unable to justify themselves, they staged these self-directed dramas. Guro continued to butter up. The leader's judgment is indeed brilliant. How could these little tricks ever deceive the leader's legal eye? So, should I look into this Zhang Yi? Chen pondered for a moment. We haven't searched the Heron's River District area yet. Send a few people to take a look. Maybe we'll find clues about that batch of materials. After his last battle with me, his abilities were questioned by the villagers. Chun-Lei himself was deeply affected. He thought he was the chosen one in the script, possessing top-level abilities, then opening a harem and reaching the pinnacle of life. But he never imagined he would be so vulnerable. The sensitive Chun-Lei became increasingly decadent, rewarding himself 5 or 6 times a day, and whining about the world with his phone in hand. One day, browsing his phone out of boredom, the sudden influx of fake messages he received days ago seemed unusual to him. He vaguely felt this might be related to the mysterious person who scared him that day. As an otaku, Chun-Lei had some tricks up his sleeve regarding computers. He quickly spotted something fishy in the messages. The IP information source caught his attention. Zhang Yi, warehouse manager, Walmart's South warehouse theft case. This was the biggest news just before the apocalypse. Chun-Lei always thought it was a self-directed farce, but now it seems it wasn't unfounded. Did he really empty the Walmart warehouse all by himself? Chun-Lei suddenly became excited. The imaginations of otaku are naturally wild, and being a mutant himself, everything became understandable. This man named Zhang Yi might have awakened a spatial domain ability, like a vacuum cleaner with infinite capacity, capable of taking in a large amount of objects. The ice and snow he controlled disappeared in front of him that day, but later the ice and snow were released again. It wasn't as simple as a rebound attack. It was like my attack was taken into another space, then released in the opposite direction. At this moment, Chun-Lei had a realization. He must be a spatial mutant. The stolen goods from from the Walmart warehouse must be in his alternate space. No wonder he owned a luxurious snowmobile rarely seen in the South. Thinking of this, Chun-Li felt a huge blow. He actually possesses spatial abilities. How enviable compared to his. My abilities are several levels inferior. Is he the real protagonist? Am I just a weak antagonist? Will I become his experience bag? Chun-Li's mood took a great hit. After all, compared to such rare abilities, his ice and snow powers seemed too effeminate, and his abilities were completely countered by Zhang Yi's. It seems he really was just a small fry, destined to become Zhang Yi's experience bag. Chun-Li also realized the gap between his strength and Zhang Yi's. At that moment, an idea came to him. Since he couldn't defeat Zhang Yi, he decided to join him. That way, he could still be a secondary character. Thinking this, Chun-Li sprang up from his bed. I need to warn the villagers first. Don't provoke him. After all, there are too many fearless fools in the village. Chun-Li jogged all the way to the village chief Su Dongxing's house. Breathlessly, he shouted urgently, "Third Grandpa, there's trouble. I have something very important to report to you." In the past, the village chief hardly bothered with a waste like Chun-Li. But now, since he awakened his ice and snow abilities, becoming the strongest fighter in the village, the chief had to give him some respect. Chun-Li immediately shared all the information he had with the chief. "We are no match for Zhang Yi. Lark Manor is too close to us. I suggest telling the villagers to stay away from there and better not to fish around that area either." However, the village chief seemed indifferent to these warnings, more intrigued by one piece of news. He looked at Chun-Li with wise eyes. "Are you saying the notorious Walmart warehouse theft case before the apocalypse was done by that guy, and all those billions worth of goods are in his hands?" Chun-Li nodded repeatedly. "It's very likely. He might have awakened a spatial ability and sneakily put all the goods into his alternate space." Hearing this, Su Dongxing's eyes lit up. Muttering to himself, he said, "If we could seize those goods, our Su family town would never have to worry about food again." Chun-Li was shocked. We really shouldn't be eyeing his goods. But Su Dongxing looked disdainful. "You're too cowardly. Our village has thousands of people. Are we really afraid of one young boy?" Chun-Li was speechless for a moment. The chief continued thoughtfully, "You coward, afraid of death. When I was young, fighting with neighboring villages over water and land, didn't we always end up bloodied? Now, in these do-or-die times, for our Su family town, even if it costs a few lives, so what?" Chun-Li was extremely frustrated. His good intentions had backfired. Meanwhile, in Lark Manor, I was tasting the newly opened 1982 La fight with two sisters. If not for the dangers outside, life in this villa was like a paradise. Even Yangmi, who had always fantasized about leaving after the apocalypse, was gradually immersed in this bliss, unable to extricate herself. Just then, a scream from outside shattered the tranquility. I suddenly stood up, wondering if someone was attacking us. I immediately sensed something was off and headed towards the balcony on the second floor. Taking out my infrared binoculars, I scanned the villa's surroundings. I saw a large group of shadows converging on the villa. Their identities were clear to me. They must be the villagers from the Su clan across the river. Considering the incident happened just 2 days ago, only such rash people would rush over without investigation. I retrieved a sniper rifle from my alternate space. Since they were so eager to court death, I was ready to oblige. They came in such numbers, clearly with ill intent. Anyone disturbing my peaceful life deserved death. However, these ordinary people were not much of a threat. The only concern was their mutant villager. If he also came, I would seize the opportunity to eliminate him as well. I searched the crowd for that mutant, letting the rest test the power of my traps. Meanwhile, the Su family town's advance team had reached the edge of the traps. Looking at the brightly lit villa not far away, it felt like a dream. After the frozen apocalypse, they had survived on stored food and fishing. How could they imagine that just across the river, in the affluent area, someone was living such a lavish life? One villager, lost in thought, walked forward. Suddenly, with a scream, intense pain shot up from his foot. The group quickly looked and found he had stepped on a board, its dense, sharp nails piercing through his foot. In such freezing temperatures, such a wound could be fatal. The team leader urgently ordered him to be carried away, alerting others to beware of traps. The village chief, commanding from the rear, heard the news and immediately issued orders. It seemed the other party had prepared in advance, but this couldn't stump Su Dongxing. He instructed, use branches and sticks to probe ahead and advance slowly. I watched all this from afar, amused at their cleverness. The show was just getting started. Indeed, they managed to clear quite a few nail traps, and soon they were slowly closing in. Seeing the village chief cleverly counter the first wave of traps, the villagers got encouraged, gradually letting their guard down. Just at that moment, someone felt a resistance near their foot, as if they had tripped over a rope. The next second, a fireball shot into the sky. A huge explosion echoed through the heavens, instantly blowing a dozen people away. The villagers retreated in fear, but some hadn't walked far when they suddenly felt intense pain in their chests and faces. Lifting their clothes, they found they had avoided the explosion, but not the flying shrapnel. The injured villagers panicked, falling to the ground, rolling around and screaming. The scene became chaotic. Suddenly, another loud bang. Someone carelessly triggered a grenade trap. The villagers were terrified, frantically scrambling back, but the snowy ground ground still harbored many nail traps. In the darkness, everyone was in disarray, losing their sense of direction. The scene was filled with wails and was extremely bloody. After the first attack, the villagers suffered heavy casualties. Continuous nail traps and explosions turned the scene into a horrific spectacle. Some villagers began to retreat. They had never been so embarrassed in previous battles. Only then did the villagers realize the seriousness of the situation. They had to call Chunlei. After all, Chunlei, who could manipulate ice and snow, was like a human cheat code in these icy conditions. The villagers surrounded the village chief. Chief quickly asked Chunlei to help. "We can't afford more casualties." Su Dongxing's expression turned grim. He thought about how Chunlei had warned him in the afternoon not to mess with Zhang Yi, and how he had scolded Chunlei for being cowardly. But now, the first wave of attack had left the villagers bewildered. Meanwhile, I was quietly observing all this with a sniper rifle in hand, wondering why the ice and snow mutant hadn't made a move yet. There were so many people, I couldn't tell which one was the mutant. The villagers were less than 200 meters from me. Killing them was as easy as flipping a hand. Even if that mutant hid and attacked from behind, as long as he was within 2,000 meters, I could still snipe him. Su Dongxing was caught between a rock and a hard place. But asking Chunlei for help was out of the question. He had already boasted in front of Chunlei, claiming he could take down Zhang Yi without his help. Moreover, asking a grandson for help was simply unthinkable for him. Su Dongxing steeled his heart and loudly scolded, "Do we really become useless without Chunlei, who hasn't set traps in the mountains when we were young? These child's play traps are only good for fooling wild boars. His house is just ahead. The monk may run, but the temple can't." Su Dongxing, for the sake of his own pride, chose to confront directly. He then handed a pair of binoculars to a villager. "Take a good look at that villa, see what's inside." Upon seeing the scene inside the villa, the villagers couldn't believe their eyes. The brightly lit house, the dining table laden with steaming delicacies, the luxurious furniture, and two fairy-like women leisurely enjoying their dinner. The villagers were tempted, but still apprehensive. After all, the snowy ground was full of traps. It still seemed better to call Chunlei. With Chunlei's abilities, just a slight effort would reveal all the traps in the snow. Hearing this, the village chief became furious. "You useless lot. It seems our village, except for Chunlei, is filled with cowards. If you're scared, then go back home now. Don't embarrass yourselves here." This reverse psychology worked wonders. The villagers' blood boiled, and they declared they were not cowards. They picked up their tools and continued clearing the traps. Seeing this, Su Dongxing nodded in satisfaction. "That's more like it. These child's play traps are nothing to be afraid of. With a bit of caution, they're harmless." After the village chief Su Dongxing's provocation, the villagers bravely continued to clear the traps. Learning from the first round of painful lessons, they quickly grew smarter. They started throwing snow blocks ahead from a distance, indeed triggering several traps. This boosted their confidence. "Just 100 meters more, and all the food and beauties inside will be ours." Su Dongxing also showed a smug smile. "I told you these childish traps are nothing. Shotgun team, keep up. They must have noticed us. Chunlei said they have guns. If they dare to shoot, we'll return fire immediately." The chief's cousin, a retired soldier, volunteered eagerly. "If that guy shows his face, I'll blow his head off." I watched all this through the scope, thinking they weren't too stupid. This method of clearing traps indeed hadn't crossed my mind, but the real show was yet to come. Primitive methods can only clear primitive traps. The upcoming high-tech ones should give them a real challenge. Yang Mi, having just finished eating, panicked upon seeing this situation. "There are so many people. If they break in, we're done for." Shou Kir, on the other hand, was calm. "I wonder how many will die this time," she said, not forgetting to mock the terrified Yang Mi. "Look at you, so cowardly. With that mouse-like courage, how will you ever follow our brother Zhang in the future?" The mountains of corpses and rivers of blood that Zhang Yi had created in the community to Shou Kir, all this was indeed a minor scene. As they entered my controllable distance, I immediately activated the villa's active noise cancellation feature. The noise outside seemed to vanish in an instant. Then, I decisively pressed the landmine activation button. A massive roar erupted in the middle of the road, and in the instant of the fiery explosion, the entire villa area was as bright as day. Though I couldn't hear the screams outside, I could clearly see the gruesome scene. Body parts and blood were scattered everywhere. Yang Mi instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Accustomed to a life of luxury, she had never seen such a scene and started vomiting violently against the table. Even Shou Kir, who had seen much, turned away, unable to bear the sight. Seeing this, I felt no ripples in my heart. After all, they brought this upon themselves. The elders commanding from the rear were stunned, their minds blank. They couldn't accept the reality before them. How could this be? A young man, mentally unhinged by the blast, ran over, grabbing the village chief's leg. Shaking, he stuttered, "Third grandpa, everyone's dead, their bodies blown to pieces. Let's run away." The village chief, shocked by the scene, collapsed to the ground. "Is he a devil? We just wanted to rob his goods and wife. How could he kill hundreds of our Su family, so many dead?" As the village chief and instigator, he knew he couldn't escape responsibility. Overwhelmed, he knelt in the snow, babbling incoherently. I watched all this from the shelter, certain the ice and snow mutant hadn't come. With no need to keep these brutes alive, I took out a compound bow. After donning my cold weather gear, I commanded the shelter's AI system, open the front window. As the command was issued, the large bulletproof glass window slowly lifted. I then placed 3 arrows on the string. After over 10 days of training, with the enhancement of my spatial ability, I had mastered shooting 3 arrows simultaneously. Standing in the darkness, I began a merciless hunt. As the arrows flew, 3 villagers were instantly pierced through the head. The already powerful modern compound bow, boosted by my ability, was even more lethal. The silent arrows reaped life after life. The panicked crowd didn't realize they were being hunted. Finally, someone noticed and shouted to the villagers, "There's a hunter." The villagers with shotguns hurriedly aimed, but in the darkness, they couldn't determine the direction. I, however, could aim precisely with my infrared tactical scope. Seeing someone with a gun, I mercilessly prioritized hunting them. The villagers couldn't understand. The shelter was nearly 200 meters away, the wind and snow so heavy. How could any bow shoot so far and with such power? Watching the villagers fall one by one, Su Dongsheng was filled with regret. Recalling Chun-Lei's earlier advice, he realized how arrogant and conceited he had been. He raised his hand and fiercely slapped his own face. I truly deserve to die. I have let down the ancestors of the Su family. I am the sinner of the Su family. I watched this through the scope, thinking if that's the case, I might as well grant him his wish. I drew the crossbow, ready to take him down, when suddenly a fierce snowstorm arose, quickly forming a tornado, blocking the path between the villagers and the shelter. I put away my bow and arrow, thinking, why come only now? As the ice and snow mutant finally decided to intervene, I immediately switched to a sniper rifle, knowing that in such a storm, arrows would be ineffective. As a mutant, Chun-Li knew the gap between the villagers and Zhang Yi better than anyone. Hearing the huge explosion, the timid Chun-Li gathered his courage and came over. He exerted all his strength to control the snow, blocking the shelter's line of sight, while shouting to the villagers, "Run, run, I can't hold this for long." In the shelter, seeing all this, I gave up shooting. With the view obstructed, blindly firing would only waste precious bullets, especially since there were only a few hundred boxes of ammunition left in the alternate space. Maintaining such a large-scale blizzard must be exhausting, and with about a kilometer to escape back across the river, I thought he couldn't hold on for long. Thinking this, I took various protective gear from the alternate space, then fully armed, I went downstairs to bid farewell to my 2 wives. "You two go take a bath. Wait for me to come back." Watching the decisive Zhang Yi, Yang Mi felt a strong sense of security. Meanwhile, Chun-Li was still struggling to maintain the blizzard. Realizing the gunfire had stopped, he secretly rejoiced. As he stopped chasing, thinking his tactic worked, but then a loud roaring sound of an engine echoed. Everyone heard it, the sound of an engine. A snow SUV suddenly burst out from the snow. I engaged the auto drive and took out an assault rifle for indiscriminate firing. The villagers screamed in terror. "Chun-Li, he's coming. Use the blizzard to stop him." I looked in the direction of the voice, trying to spot the mutant among the crowd. Soon, a chubby figure caught my attention. While everyone was frantically running, only he occasionally turned back and gestured towards me. "It's you." With a loud bang, a bullet whizzed past Chun-Li's ear, barely missing death. Chun-Li, terrified, broke into a cold sweat. Then a makeshift sled rushed over. "Chun-Li, get on." I sat in the car, pondering for 2 seconds, thinking this was the perfect opportunity to eliminate the opposing mutant. I had no reason to let him go. With this in mind, I once again revved up the engine and chased fiercely. If I killed this mutant, the other villagers would be like lambs to the slaughter. But Chun-Li still maintained the blizzard around them, especially around himself, blocking it tightly. However, he only managed to visually impair my attack. The range of the blizzard was limited, unable to protect everyone. With that, I simply turned my gun and started shooting the panicking villagers. Watching the villagers fall one by one, Chun-Li was in immense pain, but he was powerless to save everyone while protecting himself. I watched this scene with a sinister smile, wanting to see whether he valued his own life or his villagers more. In my relentless pursuit, the villagers' dog sled stood no chance against my luxury snow SUV, especially since they were dragging the bodies of their kin, intending to bury them properly, which slowed them down considerably. It was then that Chun-Li realized the problem and urgently told the villagers to discard the bodies. Reluctantly, they did so, as burying the dead properly was of great importance to them, but they had no choice in this dire situation. These bodies slightly hindered my chase, but it wasn't a big problem. The auto-drive's obstacle avoidance was quite strong, only slightly affecting my aim. Still, my shots were almost always on target, and the military sniper rifle, enhanced by my abilities, was extremely powerful, capable of penetrating 2 heads with a single bullet. Watching the villagers fall, Chun-Li was in agony. Everyone looked at him with pleading and hopeful eyes, now depending solely on him. "Chun-Li, think of something." In a moment of near despair, Chun-Li had a flash of inspiration. Opening his right hand, a blue light shone from his eyes and palm. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the ice right in front of my chase path. Under Chun-Li's continued effort, the crack widened, forcing me to temporarily halt my pursuit. Leaning out of the car window, I saw the crack extending for dozens of meters, effectively blocking my path. Standing on the car roof, I felt a chill thinking of the mutant's power to crack such thick ice. Fortunately, his ability didn't didn't seem strong enough to completely break it open, or I might have ended up in the river with my car. I randomly fired a few more shots, killing a few more villagers until the crowd disappeared from my scope. I sighed deeply, realizing that fighting him on ice in the future was not an option. An ability to control ice and snow in this ice age was unimaginable. I had to use the alternate space to right the snowmobile and return to the shelter. The traps were mostly destroyed and needed reinstalling, but it wasn't a big loss, considering the number of invaders killed. Back home, Yang-mi was still weak from the gruesome scene, having vomited her meal. Shokir asked with concern, "Did you get rid of that mutant sitting on the sofa?" I replied nonchalantly, "That guy was too sneaky. I barely saw his figure. His ability is disgusting for escaping. Killing him is not easy. But mainly, I was too cautious, letting him slip away." At that moment, Yang-mi asked with a weak voice, "Zhang-yi, aren't we being too cruel? After all, killing is a crime. Aren't you afraid of being held accountable after the apocalypse?" I touched Yang-mi's cheek noncommittally. "What do you think?" Meanwhile, having just returned home, I also felt a bit hungry, so I asked Shokir to prepare some food, specifically asking for pig brain, duck gizzards, and large intestines. Hearing these dish names and recalling the bloody scene, Yang-mi began to vomit uncontrollably again. I teased her, "Are you too weak? Do you want some nutritious food tonight to replenish your body?" After the chaotic return to their village, everyone was terrified. They had expected the heroes to return laden with spoils, but the reality was a disheveled retreat, with nearly half the people missing. There were cries of despair everywhere. Some were searching for their husbands, others for their sons. Both survivors and the bereaved were in profound grief. Chun-Lei, not knowing what to do, stood in the snowstorm. He had warned them beforehand. Then, his cousin grabbed Chun-Lei's arm, urgently shouting, "Quick, check on third grandpa. He looks like he can't hold on. He wants to see you." Hearing that Su Dongsheng, his third grandpa, was in bad shape, Chun-Lei's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately ran towards his house. At Su Dongsheng's door, it was crowded with people. All the villagers looked at Chun-Lei with complex eyes. Although the survivors knew Chun-Lei had saved them, others did not share the sentiment. Their faces showed no gratitude, but rather blame and even disgust. A woman, wiping her tears, said bitterly, "Of all the Su family, only you are lucky, possessing extraordinary powers. But why didn't you go at the start? You caused my son's death." Some even cursed him openly. "You coward. Give me back my husband's life." Chun-Lei helplessly replied in a low voice, "I didn't ask them to go. They didn't listen to my advice and insisted on going." This response only angered the villagers more, as they pointed fingers at him and accused, "You coward. If you had charged in at the beginning, using your special abilities, we wouldn't have been bombed to death." Chun-Lei was furious, but he was used to being timid in the village and didn't dare to retort in front of the family elders. Then, a scholarly elder came out of the house and said, "Let's say a few words less. This isn't Chun-Lei's fault. Come in. The elder is calling for you." At this moment, Su Dongsheng was lying on the bed, barely clinging to life. Seeing Chun-Lei arrive, he spoke with a face full of guilt. "It's all my fault. If I had listened to your advice, so many of our Su family members wouldn't have died. I've really become senile. Now I understand that our village was able to stand firm after the snow disaster entirely because of your abilities." Su Dongsheng had an epiphany, but it was too late. He held Chun-Lei's hand and said, "I've explained to the others in the family. This operation was entirely my responsibility. Let them blame me." This old man, "I know the villagers are saying things about you, but I hope you won't hold it against them. Our Su family can't afford to fight among ourselves. We can't break the lineage of the Su family." As Su Dongsheng spoke, tears streamed down his face. "So, I only ask one thing of you before I go. Protect the Su family well." Chun-Lei, tears in his eyes, nodded repeatedly. "After I'm gone, I entrust the Su family to you. That's it. I need to rest for a while. You can go out." With that, Su Dongsheng passed away. Chun-Lei quickly called the people waiting outside. Seeing Su Dongsheng with his eyes closed, the Su family members immediately burst into tears. Noticing no one paid attention to him, Chun-Lei quietly left the house. After receiving his third grandpa's last request, Chun-Lei walked back with a strange feeling in his heart. He knew that if Zhang-Yi really came to kill them, he had no choice but to flee. He thought he was the chosen one, only to find out he was just cannon fodder. Just as he dejectedly reached his home, he saw a young woman waiting at his doorstep. Seeing Chun-Lei, the girl quickly approached him. "Are you brother Chun-Lei?" Chun-Lei's face turned red, and he stammered, "Yes, that's me. Who are you?" The girl's eyes were filled with gratitude. "I'm Su Lily. I came to thank you for saving my father. He told me that you risked your life to save him today." Chun-Lei, not knowing what to do, scratched the back of his head. "It's nothing. It's what I should do." It was then that Chun-Lei realized he was not a sinner, but a hero of the village. Su Lily said shyly, looking down, "My father is still injured and couldn't come himself, so he asked me to thank you in person. But we didn't have anything to bring as a gift, so I came empty-handed." Chun-Lei waved his hands shyly. "Don't be so formal. We are all part of the Su family. I'll definitely help if I can." After a few moments of small talk, Su Lily turned and disappeared into the snow. At that moment, Chun-Lei was still unable to calm down, his heart racing uncontrollably. He felt that he had deeply fallen in love with Su Lily, even thinking of names for their future children. This otaku, who had sworn never to fall for a three-dimensional woman, had so easily betrayed betrayed his own belief. Chunlei, with a determined look, clenched his fists, resolving to protect the Su family villagers and provide a stable environment for Su Lily and their future child. Back home, Chunlei had to think of a strategy. 2 encounters with Zhang Yi had made him acutely aware of Zhang Yi's terrifying nature. However, he had promised Third Grandpa to protect the village, and now, with love in his life, he couldn't let that demon ruin his happiness. But he feared Zhang Yi might come in a fit of rage to annihilate the village. How should he handle this? A direct confrontation would surely result in his instant defeat. After much thought, he concluded that there was only one way to resolve this situation definitively: negotiation. Excited by this idea, although risky, he was ready to risk it all for the Su family and his beloved Su Lily. He hurriedly started searching for Zhang Yi's contact information on his computer, fantasizing that Su Lily must like him as he had saved her father's life. According to TV drama plots, she must have a secret crush on him. The next morning, I cautiously stepped out, fixing the damage traps, thinking the Su family was unlikely to dare another attack. Still, I prepared for a potential second wave of enemies. Ordinary people posed almost no threat to my shelter, but I had to be wary of awakened mutants. Thinking about the ice and snow mutant, I still harbored a bit of admiration for him, as his style was somewhat similar to mine, both very cautious about our lives. However, since I couldn't use him for my own purposes, I had to eliminate him beforehand. Shokir has been wholeheartedly devoted to me for a long time, and Yangmi, after the Su family town battle, lost her hope for the apocalypse's end. She used to believe the snow disaster was temporary, and the world would return to its former state, where she would be a dazzling star again. However, witnessing the brutal deaths of over 100 people shook her belief. She chose to rely on me, not superficially, but genuinely wanting to be close. Just then, a phone call suddenly came in, startling me. Instantly, I thought of Lu Fengda and how my biggest secret had been exposed. Who could be contacting me now? But this time, I was much more composed as I answered the phone. Before I could speak, an excited voice came through. "Hello, Zhang Yi. This is Chunlei from Su Family Town. Do you have a moment? I have something to discuss with you." Hearing it was someone from Su Family Town, I instantly became alert. After yesterday's attack, I had no good feelings towards their village and was planning when to annihilate them. Chunlei continued, "I was wondering if we could reconcile and avoid troubling each other in the future." Hearing this, I laughed. "I never troubled you. It was always you who provoked me." "What? Now you realize you can't beat me and want to make peace? You're quite optimistic." On the other end of the phone, Chunlei immediately became nervous. He was already very fearful in his heart. After 2 encounters, he had come to view the other party as a powerful and deadly figure. He then spoke in a trembling and submissive voice. "I called you this time to apologize. All this is our village's fault. Could you please spare our simple villagers, considering we haven't caused you any harm and have suffered heavy losses ourselves? You can set any conditions, and as long as we can meet them, we will." I found the other party's overly respectful tone strange and wondered why they sent such a weakling for negotiations. It sounded like a rookie just entering society. I then asked loudly, "First weigh yourself. Do you even have the right to represent Su Family Town?" Chunlei then revealed his identity. "Actually, I am the mutant who has clashed with you twice." Hearing this, I immediately became serious. "So it's you?" "Yes, it's me. Do you think I'm qualified now?" I thought, if it's him, he indeed has the right to negotiate, being the only person I'm wary of. My tone instantly became more amicable. "You just said that as long as I agree to reconcile, you can fulfill any of my requests, right?" Chunlei, sensing a chance, responded with a silly smile. "As long as our village can do it, we will try our best to satisfy you." After this battle, Chunlei was almost certain that I must be holding a large amount of supplies from the Walmart warehouse. He figured the village's offerings wouldn't interest me. I also sensed that this chubby guy was not stupid. His ice and snow abilities were a powerful weapon in this frozen apocalypse. If I could recruit him, he would be very useful. I then said seriously, "I only want one thing from you, that's you." Chunlei, startled. Chunlei yelped in fear. "I'm straight. Don't be like this." I was speechless, while Zhokir and Yangmi laughed nearby. "Don't misunderstand. I just find your ice and snow abilities unique. If you're sincere about making peace, come to my shelter in person," I added with emphasis. "Otherwise, if I'm in a bad mood one day, I might just wipe out your village. You should know that your abilities are completely ineffective against me. Destroying your village would be as easy as flipping my hand." Chunlei, terrified, stood up from his chair, his whole body trembling. "Don't be hasty. Wiping out our village wouldn't benefit you, right? Moreover, our village and your villa area are interdependent. If there's an external enemy in the future, we can help each other." I disdainfully replied, "Don't talk to me about enemies. Aren't you my biggest enemy right now? If you can win, you rob me of my supplies and wife. If you can't, you come seeking peace. Your calculations are so loud, I can hear them from my house. If you want to make peace, show your sincerity. What do you mean by calling me? Are you just informing me? If you're serious about making peace, come to my shelter at 2:30 p.m. Only you, Chunlei, need to come." From the conversation, I got a grasp of this chubby guy's character, probably a timid, weak, and cowardly otaku, clearly not a shrewd and strong person, so I directly forced him to make a choice. "Whether you come or not is up to you. If you don't, I'll find time to come over and wipe out your village. Hearing this, Chun-Li was immediately terrified, losing all rhythm in the negotiation. The horror in his heart was magnified, and the scene of yesterday's massacre resurfaced in his mind. He blurted out tremblingly, okay, I'll go. After saying this, I hung up the phone directly, not giving Chun-Li a chance to back out. Chun-Li was stunned and collapsed to the ground, his legs giving way. This is it. Going there is almost certain death. My pure love, my life of cheats. Is it all going to end here? After hanging up, I also became serious, starting to plan the afternoon meeting. This guy's abilities indeed had limitless potential and could be a huge threat, but if he could become my subordinate, that would be a good choice. I decided to test him in the afternoon. After all, his abilities posed no threat to me. I would decide then whether to kill him or not. After my rest, I went to the balcony, fully armed, waiting for this chubby guy with my sniper rifle. Soon, a figure appeared in my scope, the portly figure I recognized from last night's tactical sight. My aim was already locked on his head. The moment he entered my shooting range, I could blow his brains out. But before he had walked a few steps, the chubby guy slipped and fell, making me burst into laughter. Is this the powerful ice and snow mutant, the one with limitless potential? But I couldn't let my guard down and continued to watch him. Just as he got up, he fell again. It seemed he was really scared stiff. Seeing he posed no threat, I relaxed and prepared to meet this interesting mutant downstairs. Chun-Li then called, "Your house is surrounded by traps. I dare not come." "No need for you to come," I said, and before the words had even faded, I appeared right in front of Chun-Li. Upon seeing me, Chun-Li's legs went weak. "Are you Zhang-Yi?" He hadn't expected the fearsome killer he imagined to look like a scholarly person. Gathering his courage, Chun-Li said, "I've complied with your request and came alone. That should show enough sincerity, right? Let's not fight anymore. This was a meaningless battle to begin with." Hearing this, I laughed. "You initiated the attack and now you're seeking peace. And you say it's meaningless. Do you really mean that?" Chun-Li awkwardly touched the back of his head and said with a silly smile, "Indeed, it's our village's fault. So, what conditions do you want for making peace? I want to know, what can you offer to earn my forgiveness?" Chun-Li sheepishly replied, "Except for the lives of our Su family members, you can ask for anything." I thought to myself that I lacked nothing in terms of supplies, and there was nothing in their village that I wanted, but I still needed to assert my authority. Hand over the initiator of this attack. That person must die. Otherwise, there's no deal. To my surprise, Chun-Li became excited. The initiator of the attack was our village chief, and he's already been scared to death by you. Are you satisfied now? I was somewhat speechless. I killed over 100 people yesterday. Weren't any of them your relatives? Don't you want to avenge them? Chun-Li then spoke with a tinge of sadness. My parents died soon after the snow disaster. My dad had a heart condition and fell ill on the first day of the snowstorm. There were no ambulances due to the heavy snow, and he died at home. My mom passed away in bed a week later. And the others, they are not my direct relatives. They generally look down on me. In their eyes, I'm just a useless person who plays games at home all day. So, I don't really have feelings for other Su family members. That's why I don't hold a grudge against you for killing hundreds of Su family people. On the contrary, I kind of admire you. The way you chased us in your car last night was really cool." Having heard this, I decided to give this chubby guy a chance. I can agree to make peace, but I'm not interested in your village. Those villagers pose no threat to me. However, you, the chubby guy, are somewhat interesting. For your sake, I can spare your village. Chun-Li immediately became incredibly excited, rushing over to hug me, as being acknowledged by someone as powerful as me was a huge honor for him. I repeatedly waved my hands to stop him. "Don't get excited. I have conditions. From now on, you have to follow my orders and comply with any of my requests." Hearing this condition, Chun-Li was terrified. "What if you covet my body?" I was speechless at his reaction. Seeing Chun-Li hesitating, I pulled out my trump card, directly taking out a limited edition figurine from the alternate space. "Here, this is for you. Working for me won't leave you shortchanged." Chun-Li's eyes lit up immediately. Such a rare figurine was almost irresistible to an old otaku like him. "I have many more of these. As long as you follow me loyally, you'll have enough limited edition figurines, body pillows, games, and cartridges." Chun-Li, blissfully hugging the figurine, nodded repeatedly. Okay, whatever you want." And just like that, I successfully recruited Chun-Li as my subordinate. I also had a natural liking for this chubby guy. Being with a straightforward, heartless fat guy always gave a sense of reliability. But most importantly, I valued his ice and snow abilities. In this Ice Age apocalypse, his potential was limitless. "Since you're here, help me with something," I said. Chun-Li perked up, thinking, so quickly a task? It feels good to be valued. I then took out a snow SUV from the alternate space. Chun-Li was stunned and, in his surprise, began to flatter earnestly. "Time does not exist. Space is king. Brother Zhang's abilities are surely invincible globally." This made me inadvertently think of something. When I was on the brink of death, I returned to a month earlier. Wasn't that time travel? Maybe I had an unexplored time travel ability related to my spatial abilities. After driving for a while, we arrived in front of a large building, originally a major gas station. The shelter consumed several times more energy than a safe house, so I needed to stock up in advance. After confirming the location, I instructed Chun-Li, "Clear all this snow." Eager to prove himself, Chun-Li used all his strength. With a loud bang, the thick snow cracked open, The snow in front of us started to shake violently, and then huge chunks of ice and snow rose into the air before being tossed to the sides. At first, Chun-Lei seemed relaxed, but gradually he started to struggle. I observed Chun-Lei from behind. Although he had become my capable subordinate, I still needed to understand his skills, as it's always wise to be cautious of others. Soon after, the deeply buried gas station was cleared out. Chun-Lei, gasping for air, collapsed on the ground. I was secretly thrilled inside. With Chun-Lei, a top-tier tool person, gathering resources in the future would be much easier. I handed him a piece of chocolate, and seeing the chocolate bar, Chun-Lei's eyes lit up. He tore open the wrapper and started munching on it eagerly. Meanwhile, I quickly slid into the freshly cleared snow pit, planning to take all the stored oil into my possession. After the job was done, Chun-Lei started flattering me again. "Brother Zhang, you are truly amazing." I felt a bit embarrassed hearing this because, after all, the main work was done by this chubby guy. I merely stretched out my hand to put the oil cans into the alternate space. I pulled up Chun-Lei and asked, "Haven't you tried using your abilities to dig up resources before?" "Of course, I have. But in this extreme cold weather, we can't go far. Our dogs aren't purebred Siberian Huskies either, so we can only dig up some resources nearby. But for us, that's already enough. There's no need to risk our lives going further away." I looked at Chun-Lei as if he were a treasure. This is truly a top-tier tool person. With you following me, these issues are no problem. You just stick with me, and I'll make sure you live well. I then pulled out a backpack. "Here, take these supplies as a reward for today." Chun-Lei, holding the heavy backpack, was overjoyed and his eyes welled up with tears. "Brother Zhang, just give the word for any task. If I hesitate even for a second, I don't deserve the Su surname." After saying this, I prepared to drive back. On the way, I casually asked Chun-Lei about his process of awakening his abilities. To my surprise, as soon as I asked, Chun-Lei's face turned red as if it was something unspeakable. He stammered, "After my parents passed away, I didn't feel like living either, but I didn't have the courage to commit suicide, so I just lay in bed, ready to starve myself to death." "Did you awaken your abilities when you were about to starve to death?" Chun-Lei's face turned even redder. I was lying there and found the bed quite comfortable. Then I thought, since I'm ending my life anyway, why not enjoy myself one last time? A friend once told me excessive rewards harm the body, but I thought, since I'm not going to live, why care about the harm? So I unrestrainedly indulged myself. How many times? Chun-Lei's face almost buried under the car seat. I've forgotten the exact number, maybe around 20-something times. In the end, I almost lost consciousness. However, after losing consciousness, my body mysteriously underwent a strange transformation. I covered my face, unable to look directly at this chubby guy. So, that's how he awakened his ice and snow abilities. Truly bizarre. I dropped Chun-Lei off by the river. It's only a few hundred meters away from their village. Chun-Lei, puzzled, asked me, "Brother Zhang, can you take me across the river? With this weather and my physique, walking back is quite tough. It's just a press of the gas pedal for you." Hearing this, I smiled deeply. My car tends to slip on the river surface, so I won't go over. In my mind, once across the river, it's Chun-Lei's home turf. Although he seems to have surrendered to me on the surface, I still need to be extra cautious. His control of the ice last night, trapping my car on the river, made me wary. Chun-Lei found the slipping excuse far-fetched. Last night, when Zhang Yi was chasing us in his car with a sniper rifle, he looked pretty cool. But now, as my diehard fan, he thought my concerns were not unreasonable, so he didn't question it further and obediently unbuckled his seatbelt to get out of the car. Before he left, I called out to him, "Chun-Lei, there's something you need to be careful about." Hearing his name called directly, Chun-Lei felt a sense of closeness. I patted his shoulder and spoke earnestly. "In this apocalyptic world, danger lurks everywhere. Your Su family town is known in the city for its vegetables and food. I guess it's inevitable that you'll attract attention, so you must be extra vigilant." After thanking me, Chun-Lei got out of the car and walked towards the village. My kind reminder to Chun-Lei obviously had a deeper purpose. I'm not so kind-hearted to care about the lives and deaths of the Su family. However, my shelter and Su family town are interdependent, so it doesn't hurt to make them more cautious. By instilling this idea in him, any stranger appearing nearby would be treated as a potential enemy by him, adding an extra layer of natural protection to my shelter. Upon returning to the village, Chun-Lei, excited, ran to report the good news to the current village chief, expecting praise from Su Dongtang. However, he was met with a harsh scolding instead. This reaction clearly doused him in cold water. Chun-Lei, puzzled, said, "Sixth Grandpa, I did this to protect our village from being attacked. After all, Zhang Yi is so strong, we have no power to resist." Su Dongtang sneered, "If you hadn't played the coward yesterday, we wouldn't have suffered such heavy losses. Your third grandpa died because of you. Now you're making decisions on your own to negotiate peace. You've truly lost the face of our Su family ancestors." Chun-Lei was momentarily unable to retort, feeling incredibly disheartened. "But I promised third grandpa to protect Su family town. We really can't fight against Zhang Yi. There's no choice but to seek peace." To his surprise, Su Dongtang suddenly scolded him harshly, slamming his hand on the table to interrupt Chun-Lei. "Who is the clan leader? You or me? You think you're smart. From now on, all actions must be reported to me first. You can't make decisions on your own." Chun-Lei was reprimanded like a cat that had done something wrong. wrong, but he had just thought of himself as a meritorious figure. In the midst of self-doubt, Su Dongtang suddenly came over, patted Chun-Lei's shoulder, and said solemnly, "Sixth Grandpa knows you have no ill intentions, but you're still too young. Many things lack thorough consideration. This time, it's because of you that Su family suffered heavy losses. If I hadn't spoken up for you in front of the clan, you would have been driven out of the village by now. Staying in the village now is also to atone for your sins. So, you must obediently follow my orders from now on." Su Dongtang emphasized this last part. Chun-Lei shuddered, repeatedly assuring that he understood. Su Dongtang then showed a satisfied expression. "You can go back now. Remember, never act on your own again." Watching Chun-Lei walk away, Su Dongtang adjusted his glasses, thinking to himself, young people are so arrogant and presumptuous. They shouldn't think they can disregard their elders just because they've gained some skills. He then took out his phone and sent messages to various branches of the clan, taking all the credit for negotiating peace with Zhang Yi. The branches, who had been worried about Zhang Yi attacking, were finally relieved. They unanimously praised Su Dongtang's capability, even saying that they should have supported 6th Grandpa as the clan leader earlier to avoid 3rd Grandpa's foolish mistakes. They lamented that hundreds had to die to accompany that old man in his errors, praising 6th Grandpa for his foresight and wisdom. Su Dongtang felt greatly satisfied inside, muttering to himself, "This good-for-nothing who hides at home playing games all day thinks he can play games with me? He's too naive." Back at the shelter, to ease their worries, I briefly shared with the two sisters what had happened after I left. Yang Mi clapped her hands in approval after hearing it. "This is really great. Now we don't have to worry about them attacking anymore." Zhou Qi, however, was used to such events and looked at Yang Mi with disdain. "My brother Zhang didn't annihilate them all, which is already the greatest mercy he could show them. There's nothing to be afraid of. But since you, the scaredy cat, think this way, I can understand. Otherwise, you wouldn't have nearly vomited bile yesterday." Yang Mi, frustrated, stamped her foot. "That's not true. I just didn't want to see such a bloody scene again." Zhou Qi didn't bother to listen to her explanation, coming over to hug me and praising me enthusiastically. "My brother Zhang is so powerful. Those small fries couldn't possibly threaten us. But I have started to worry. Last time we went to the defense camp for weapons, we found that the people there had already evacuated in an orderly manner, taking a lot of heavy weapons with them. These well-trained organizations are the most troublesome." Yang Mi, not to be outdone, pressed herself against me with her most prominent feature. "Don't always think of the worst. At least we've solved our current problem, which is worth celebrating." Saying this, Zhou Qi walked over to the bar to get some drinks. "If we're celebrating, we must have a few drinks to enjoy it properly." Yang Mi also offered to cook some of her signature dishes, thinking to herself that she was a well-known social butterfly in the entertainment industry and had developed a good tolerance for alcohol. "Today I'm going to teach you both a lesson," I said with a laugh. "Just have a bit for the sake of it. My alcohol tolerance is quite average." Hearing this, the two of them became even more excited. "No problem, we'll stop when it's enough." In less than 2 hours, the two women lay unconscious on the sofa. Watching the two drunken cats who tried to get me drunk, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I forgot to tell you, before I was a warehouse manager, I used to sell alcoholic beverages. Slightly tipsy, I approached them and started getting busy with Yang Mi, who was in my arms. Yang Mi opened her sleepy eyes, surprised to find me on top of her. "How can you do this? Sister Zhou Qi is right beside us." I ignored her and continued with what I was doing for 2 or 3 minutes before satisfactorily falling asleep. A few days later, Chun-Lei suddenly sent me a message, asking me to take him out on a mission, complaining that staying at home was too boring. He also suggested forming a 5-person superpower team, using colors to represent each member's name, which could be called the Rainbow Squad. He even thought of the names. "You'll be the king of no color, and I'll be the king of blue." I was speechless, but to completely win people's hearts, I reluctantly endured the disgust to chat with this fat guy and extract some useful information. Gradually, I found it increasingly unbearable. This guy probably didn't have a girlfriend and clearly had too much energy. I burst out cursing him directly. "You, this fatso, are you just bored out of your mind?" But Chun-Lei didn't feel offended. Instead, he felt he had gotten even closer to his big brother, sending me an emoji. "Awesome, my brother. How did you guess I'm bored all day? Everything is indeed within your expectations. You are my god." Holding my face, I was completely speechless. This kind of otaku is basically on the fringes of society, so when they encounter someone who is even slightly nice to them, they are ready to give their all. Even if I spoke harshly to him, he would only think positively about it. Over time, I really couldn't bear to scold this fat otaku anymore, so I turned on the smart reply software. As long as he sent 3 or 5 messages, it would automatically reply with a "oh" or "hm." Even with such perfunctory responses, this fat guy could be as happy as a 300-pound child. During the boring times in the shelter, I always go to the control room to oversee everything, meticulously checking for any security risks. Yang Mi has now managed the ecological botanical garden quite well. It seems that surviving in this shelter indefinitely is not a big problem. However, there's one issue that I can't help but worry about: the cybersecurity problem. This supercomputer controls all the programs of the shelter. Without it, the entire shelter would instantly become paralyzed. It's understandable that Lu Fengda could hack into my phone phone, but even the otaku Chun-Lei could find my number, which shows there are significant vulnerabilities in the shelter's network security. If the network is hacked by top experts, my shelter might collapse without being attacked. Meanwhile, Yang Mi and Zhou Kir seem to have started arguing. Yang Mi, somewhat agitated, says, Zhou Kir, you must help with this. You've been with Zhang Yi for a longer time, and he will definitely listen to you if you ask him. Zhou Kir looks helpless. I know Zhang Yi too well. He is such a cautious person. He wouldn't risk even the slightest danger, especially since we rely on him for our livelihood. If something happens to him, none of us can survive. After a moment of contemplation, Yang Mi asserts, regardless, I have to try. Now, all I have is this body of mine. Zhou Kir looks at her disdainfully. In plain terms, you're planning to seduce him, aren't you? As Zhou Kir stands up in anger, she says, don't think I don't know what you two have been up to behind my back. And now you want me to help you? What? Should we both do it together? To her surprise, Yang Mi weakly nods her head. For my sister, I don't mind. I, who have been eavesdropping at the door, suddenly enter the room and jokingly ask, why aren't you sleeping in the middle of the night? What are you talking about? Yang Mi, trying to act calm, grabs my hand. We are just talking about family matters. I probe further. Then tell me about it too. There's no one else here anyway. Is it because you still have living relatives you want to bring over to live together? Zhou Kir shakes her head in panic. No, that's not it. I lost contact with my family after the disaster. I came to Heavenly Sea City alone, so I've been out of touch with my family for a long time. They are most likely no longer alive. At this point, Yang Mi stammers out, it's me. It's my family. My sister has contacted me. She's in danger and asked me to find a way to save her. It turns out her sister contacted her yesterday, saying she was in a very dangerous situation, so she hopes I can find a way to save her. Upon hearing this, I just chuckled. What can you two ladies possibly do to save someone? Don't tell me you're planning to put this on my shoulders, expecting me to risk my life to save someone unrelated? I'm not that altruistic. Knowing that the matter was already out in the open, Yang Mi, dropping all pretenses, clung to me, pleading she might be my only surviving relative. I can't just watch her die. Since she's Yang Mi's sister, she's naturally also related to Zhou Kir. So, Zhou Kir also came over, looking at me with a pleading face. She's our family. If she dies because we didn't save her, we'll feel guilty for the rest of our lives. I looked helplessly at the sisters. You both know what the situation is like outside. My information is no longer a secret. I don't know how many people are eyeing my supplies in this super shelter. I sat up straight. There's no discussion about this. Asking me to take such a high risk for a stranger, even if you try to seduce me, it won't work. Don't think that living with me for a while will influence my judgment. Seeing my firm refusal, the sisters panicked and began to cry, clinging to my legs. Please, if you agree to save her, we will fulfill any of your requests unconditionally. Zhou Kir whispered in my ear, have you ever tried a threesome? Hearing this, my eyes lit up. Are you serious? The sisters looked at me with hopeful eyes, waiting for my nod. I took a deep breath, about to refuse, when Yang Mi continued, my sister Yang Xinshin is physically disabled. It's a miracle she's survived this long. She must be desperate to seek help from me, her useless sister. She's so pitiful. I hesitated, about to speak, then held back. Are you talking about the genius hacker Yang Xinshin you mentioned before? I thought to myself, an 18-year-old, beautiful, genius hacker. Isn't that the ideal network engineer I've been looking for? My heart surged with excitement. The biggest headache for me right now is the cybersecurity issue. Most importantly, reliability is key. She's the sister of these two women here, so there's no doubt about her loyalty. Thinking of this, I grasped the hands of the two women, looking at them affectionately. Don't worry, since she's your sister, she's like my sister too. I, Zhang Yi, am not one to fear death or stand by idly. Upon hearing my words, the two sisters were overjoyed. Zhou Kir even had a starstruck look on her face. In her view, Zhang Yi had always been a refined egoist. He's helping me now. He must be in love with me, she thought. Yang Mi was also instantly moved to tears. I don't know how to repay your kindness. I looked at them proudly. In your eyes, am I, Zhang Yi, really so heartless? You're all wrong. I'm actually a person who appears cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. I genuinely cherish the people around me. The two women blushed, their perception of me undergoing a huge transformation. Zhou Kir fell even deeper, while Yang Mi was instantly smitten, at a loss for words. Sensible as she was, she slowly knelt before me. After a whole night of intense discussion, I agreed to rescue their sister Yang Xinshin. Of course, the most important reason wasn't this seduction tactic. After all, my biggest problem right now is cybersecurity. If I could rescue this genius hacker and have her work for me, all the problems would be solved. I then asked the two to discuss the rescue plan with me. Tell me about your sister's situation. Yang Mi spoke seriously. Yang Xinshin is currently trapped in Azure Sky Academy. You might have heard of it. Azure Sky Academy is a top-tier aristocratic school offering integrated education from kindergarten to university. It usually only nurtures the children of the elite, but also admits a few geniuses. Graduates from there usually become pillars in both political and business circles. Hearing this, I couldn't help but wonder, how did a paraplegic girl survive under such extreme cold conditions? After all, schools are densely populated places and generally don't have much food storage. It's hard to imagine her surviving in such a brutal apocalypse. Yang Mi continued, such high-level aristocratic schools have their special food supply channels, and there's quite a bit of food stored in their warehouses. Yang Xinshin happened to hide in the cafeteria early in the snow disaster, which is why she didn't starve to death. But I still have many doubts. Why did she wait until now to contact you? In a crisis, one would seek help from anyone possible. Why did she think of contacting you, her sister, almost 2 months after the apocalypse began? As soon as I said this, Yang Mi was also stunned. I don't know why either. Let me call her right now. I was too anxious yesterday. There were many things I didn't get to ask. But after trying to call several times without success, she remembered that she had also tried to contact her before but couldn't get through, so she didn't hold much hope. At this point, Zhou Kir mocked with a covered mouth. Maybe Yang Xinshin thought you were already dead, so she didn't take you seriously at all. I then asked Yang Mi, how far is Azure Sky Academy from us? Seeing Yang Mi's clueless expression, I took out my phone and opened the map. Nowadays, signals are poor, and satellite positioning is also problematic, so we can only check distances through the map. I found out that Azure Sky Academy is located in West Mountain District, about 23 kilometers in a straight line from the villa area. Being able to call you is already a miracle under the current long-distance communication breakdown, but it's also possible she thought you were dead, so she never thought of contacting you, her useless sister. Come with me to the control room. Nowadays, ordinary mobile phones can't transmit signals through the nebula chain, but the supercomputer in the control room might be able to. After dialing Yang Xinshin's number, a harsh electronic noise followed, indicating that the signal over there was extremely unstable, seemingly under some strong interference. However, after a few seconds, the call successfully connected, and the two sisters immediately became excited. Yang Xinshin, it's Sister Mi. Quickly tell me your situation. Your sister will find a way to rescue you. The voice on the other end was intermittent, and the noise was significant. We only heard her say she was at the school cafeteria, and it seemed she was in a very dangerous situation. I urgently asked, quick, what kind of danger are you in? Only to hear disjointed phrases coming through, run, monsters. Following that, amid the chaotic electronic noise, a chilling, terrifying sound emerged, something not human. It was like a roar from some giant monster. The call was suddenly cut off amidst the noise, leaving only a busy tone echoing anxiously. Initially, I thought it was just a simple mission to retrieve someone from a school, but the call revealed a terrifying monster noise. The sound of limbs and bones being torn apart, something I've only heard in zombie movies, was followed by an abrupt end to the call, leaving only a beeping sound echoing in the control room. It seems Azure Sky Academy has monsters. Could animals have mutated too? Seeing my hesitant expression, Yang Mi clung to me again, pleading in a soft, coaxing voice, Brother Zhang Yi, you promised us. You can't go back on your word. To this, I smiled slightly. I said I would save her, and I will. Don't worry, it seems the situation has become somewhat tricky. I must call 2 mutant allies to help. I'll have Uncle Yu, a meat shield, lead the way. Chun Lei controlling the ice and snow in the middle, while I can lurk in the back to find opportunities for surprise attacks. If things go south, I can be the first to flee. This formation is simply perfect. Thinking this, I quickly called Chun Lei. Chun Lei had been eager to get out and was already impatient to start the mission. Uncle Yu also agreed readily. I thought that the eerie noise might be from a mutated person or some other mutant creature, although it sounds terrifying considering that a paraplegic girl managed to cope with it for over a month. We, being 3 mutants, should not find it too difficult. However, I still need to be more cautious, as the opponent is an unknown mutant. Early the next morning, the sisters had already prepared a full table of delicious food. I didn't indulge myself in gluttony, as eating a mix of things can easily cause diarrhea, and I couldn't drink too much either, as it would affect my mobility. However, I still needed to replenish enough physical energy. My alternate space was also prepared with food for timely replenishment. All my weapons and equipment were fully loaded and ready. After making all the preparations, Chun Lei called me. I'm already by the river. Hurry up and come pick me up. He knew that my house was surrounded by traps and didn't dare to come close. He still has several relatives buried in the snow in front of my house. I told him I'd be right there. After hanging up the phone, I said to the 2 women, to ensure your safety, you'll have to stay in the basement for a while. Yang Mi, not understanding, asked, why the basement when the house is so secure? Zhou Kir, instantly understanding, pulled Yang Mi by her clothes. Don't ask too many questions. Just do as you're told, she said, pushing Yang Mi towards the basement. Zhou Kir knew the man's intentions. After all, the information was provided by her and her sister, and the person being rescued was their sister. He was worried that this might be a trap they had concocted together. This is his usual way of handling things. I locked the 2 of them in rooms made of alloy, using the highest authority to lock the doors from the outside. No one but me could open the doors. Yang Mi began to understand what this meant. Although a bit uncomfortable, she was still going to save her sister, and she cheered and encouraged me. I also promised them that as long as their sister was still alive when we got there, we would definitely bring her back safely. Leaving the basement, I sighed inwardly. Actually, I didn't want to be so cautious in everything, and I certainly didn't want to be constantly wary of even those closest to me. But in order to live securely in this post-apocalyptic world, one cannot afford the slightest bit of carelessness.